All right, today's SQL training is on XML shredding, addressing OpenXML and attributes, elements, and levels, and OpenXML options. And we'll also cover attributes and elements and how you can query for those specifically with or without the OpenXML options. So shredding XML is kind of a term for any time you turn like an XML file into tabular data. So it could be, inside of SQL Server. It could be done outside of SQL Server. But that's what the term shredding is ripping apart this XML structure into, rows and columns of data. So in SQL Server, we have SP XML prepare document, and when you call that with your XML data, it loads it into memory for your session and hands back a handle ID. So then you can use that later on for queries to kind of query against that XML plan, kind of like you would a table. Since SQL Server 2000 or after 2000, that plan in memory would go away once you closed your session, or you can remove it on the fly with a SP XML remove document, and then you can just pull out a memory right then and there. So it's handy if on a web server to get rid of that stuff when your user moves on, or just good practice to get rid of it when you're done with it, instead of leaving it hanging around in memory until the session expires. Okay, OpenXML, this is what you use to query that plan handle, or that XML value that you loaded into memory. You call it with the plan handle, which is an integer, and then you can pass it a row pattern of where you want the results to come from. And then there is a with part that defines which columns you want returned. So in this kind of example here that I put on there, we'll go over it in the demo. But the plan handle is 1, so it was the first XML that we ran into it for our session. And we're just going to select everything from that plan where the row pattern matches that category / item. And we'd want to see back the item SKU value and the quantity on hand value. You notice here there's the data type. That is something that you have to define so the server can know kind of what to expect out of there. It's XML, so you don't really know what's coming in, third-party data. So you want to make sure that they're adhering to standards. Sometimes they don't. So you might want to use, say, in varchar max or something that can accept all values and then do validation later on. In this sample here, we know for sure that this column is going to be an integer, so it won't blow up it won't ever blow up. That's just kind of making an assumption there. All right, so on to the demo. So drop create database, just an inventory database here for some sporting goods store. So this is what we're going to do. We can create, so in other trainings, make this bigger. The trainings we learned how to make XML. You can see here we've got the XML out of the database. I copied that and using it, just going to kind of query that XML plan. So we define a plan handle, define the XML right here, and then we will use the XML prepare document the plan handle as an output, the integer, and passing in the XML string. Let's make this bigger. And then we'll just select the plan handle back out, and we got a 1. So that means that's the first plan for our session. All right, we will plan penalty. So let's run it again. Actually, we can just do it right here. So we'll declare. So now we want to query that plan. So I don't know. For me, I like to throw things in variables, not hard code things as much as possible. So we do the plan handle as integer 1, and we'll do select star from the OpenXML with that plan handle, and give me like the root level, so the categories level. You can see here that it has a whole bunch of information on every single thing. I can't make that bigger, but categories, that was the root node. Category was the first kind of child node. Category title was an attribute right here. And the text was AX. Then item was the next node level. Item SKU is an attribute. Its text is this. The next attribute is quantity on hand, and its value is 35. And then the node value, or the element value, is this. Shows up here. So you can see that when you're not doing any sort of filtering, it just kind of outputs every single piece of information in the XML plan. Okay, so we get on to row patterns, and here I defined it. Instead of just category, and an item, I put that inside of a text string, so I can just pass both of those into the OpenXML query. And we can run that again. And in this one, I only want back the item SKU and the quantity on hand, which are available at the item level. You can see here, item SKU, attribute, quantity on hand. So we'll run that. And it went through all the XML and at the item level and returned each item SKU, attribute, and quantity on hand. So now we've turned that XML string document into tabular data. So what happens when the data type's incorrect? So we can see here that item SKU contains alpha characters, but I'm saying it's an int. So say the vendor messed up their XML feed.
Can you change the plan?
Oh, yeah, change the plan here. Every time you run this demo, it's, plan handle changes. So good catch. So you get an error back saying, conversion failed when converting in varchar to int. So unless you know your feed or your XML is perfect, it might be best to just assume it's not and validate or have some error handling around it. Just be prepared that it will blow up if your data types don't match what it pulls out of the XML. Okay, so as I mentioned, you can alias columns. When you alias, you have that on the before your data type, and then after your data type, you define what column or what value you want returned. So in this case, item SKU was an attribute in the XML, so you add the @ sign, and it goes and looks at the attribute. There we go. You can see that the results are the same, but now I've aliased the item column. All right, so I mentioned row patterning. So you can do recursive row patterning with kind of skipping a level, just doing // and it will find all the matching grandchildren kind of at any level throughout the XML. And then column patterns are in the with portion, so you can reference more than just nodes or attributes or elements at that given level. You can also go up the tree. And so in this example, do parent level and then find any node that says grandchildren. It could be 2 or 3 levels deeper or 1 level deeper, and then return the results, some alias, but go back up 1 level to the child level and return that attribute. So you're not always just locked into one level. And then OpenXML options define the default column type as, hey, look for. So when I list out the width in the width portion, which columns I want, it's saying, hey, assume these are all attributes, or hey, assume these are all elements, or attributes and elements. And when you do that, say you say row pattern, and then your options are number 1. So assume all the columns I want back are attributes. You can still define one as, hey, this last one is an element. And we'll go over it in the examples. So
sorry, question.
Okay.
Do any of your examples include like encoding, decoding? Like, does it if there is happen to be, this is going to handle encoding scenarios where maybe there's in the database content, there's actually like a, greater than, less than, something that looks like a.
So the question was, is there any encoding built into this? And no, there's not. What it's reading from is it's not reading from encoded XML in the database, like an ampersand, LGT, semicolon. It's reading from a valid XML string. So like you can see here in the example, it's converting this text string here into XML. So if it was not valid XML, it was encoded, then it would be like, oh no, invalid XML.
Right, but I guess I'm saying if like item SKU had an ampersand GT semicolon, so when that gets encoded into the data, what the actual database query returns, will it show the ampersand greater than T, the actual encoding thing, or will it actually have been encoded to a greater than?
Let's find out.
Conversions.
Let's get this. Okay, we'll come back to row patterning. I will go over it at the end if we have time. So, okay. So row patterning. This XML example or sample is a little bit different. It goes category with the attributes, an item with a couple attributes, and then there's a description node inside of that, and a parts with a part node. So multiple parts, a head and a handle for each axe. So let's run that, get the handle. So our plan number is 3. Put 3 in there. And with this OpenXML query here, we're going to return all item nodes, the item SKU, which is an attribute at that level. You can see right there, attribute at that level. And then we're also saying category description, which doesn't exist at that level or lower. We need to go up a level and find the attribute at description. So even though there's a description node, we're saying, hey, go up 1 level to the category and grab axe category. So you run that. We can see here that we now have the item SKU and the parent category. right, so returning attributes and elements. So in this one, it's saying, hey, find all nodes or all levels that contain part, or all part nodes. Go up 3 levels, get the category title, because the part node is pretty low. Go up 2 levels, get the item SKU, get the description at the part level, not the multiple levels up description, and get the that's description attribute, and get the replacement cost element. So you can see here, replacement cost is an element, whereas description is just an attribute. Replacement cost and the value. So we run that one. You can see that it returned the category title at the very top, which is axe. The SKU, which was a couple levels up as an attribute. The description at the part level itself, head, and then the element value, which is 13 for the replacement cost. So that way you can kind of go up and down the chain for whatever row you're at or whatever level you're at that matches your row pattern.
Question.
Yep.
Could the element for the replacement cost that you have in varchar, could that have been an int, or is there something because it's an element value it has to be considered text?
So
data?
Question was replacement cost. I have it defined as an varchar max. Could it have been an int? With this data set, yes, it could have been an int. But I think if you're accepting XML in from a system that you don't have control over, and you can't guarantee that it's not perfect, or you can't guarantee that it is perfect, then you should always assume it could be any character under the sun. Pull it in, parse it, and then validate. So that's why I defined each one of these as varchar max. All right, and then on to OpenXML options. So the plan handle we're working on is 3. Again, we want to get every every row that is a part row, and we are going to say, search each of the listed columns as attributes. So we've got category title, which is defined as something else, item SKU, which is defined as something else, but then we have description and replacement cost. So since we're going to call it with the option of 1, it's going to look for the attribute description and attribute replacement cost. We can see that the attribute description exists, but the attribute replacement cost is actually an element. So it doesn't exist at this level as a attribute, which would look like this if it was an attribute. So when we run that, we can see that the replacement cost column is null. It doesn't blow up, saying, hey, I didn't find anything. It just looks for it, doesn't find it, and returns null.
Can you do not null? Can you actually, where you're with there, could you?
So the question is, can I throw an is null or something around that? Is that what the question
I
is?
guess, well, here you're defining what you're getting back with the width. Can you say that certain categories or certain columns would not be null?
So the question was, can I kind of filter this result set where something is not null? And I don't believe so. I believe this is more of like a, just give me the output, and then I'll query this output as a table. So we can flip that around now, saying, using option 2, which says assume everything is an element and return the value. Two. Now we can see that description is null because description was an attribute at the part level and replacement cost was an element. So that's why we see all the replacement cost element values and the empty description field. So now we say 3, which is assume it's an element or an attribute. And we get back no nulls. So now we'll run it the same query. I alias that, but we won't add any options at all. And we can see that the results are the same. All right, so any review? Shredding XML is pulling in the function of pulling in an XML stream or file and converting that to a tabular data set. Row and column patterning, figuring out where you want to, what level you want to return data from in the XML, and what level for each data element you want to pull, so you can go up the chain or down the chain. And then OpenXML with option defines the kind of defaults of what you're trying to get back, if it's an attribute or an element. Any questions on that?
So the text node comes under the elements?
So the text node comes
so like
under the
at the
elements.
very beginning, one of the first ones you did, like let's say
Up there. All right.
there was one like 10-man tent.
Okay.
The type of that is what?
So the question was the type of 10-man tent.
I call that
right
the
here.
text, right?
So that's called like an element. Well, this is the element.
Yeah.
But then this is the element value. You don't ever define something as, hey, give me an element value. It's more of a, hey, give me the element. So in this case, 10-man tent camo would be the element, which we can see in the last example. We have replacement cost is 4. So that's the element, and that's the element value. And when we ran it, you can see here's the element value. If I was looking for a attribute, I would throw an @ sign on there, and it would look for every part element, get me the replacement cost attribute. But since I have this, it's saying for every part element, return the value of a kind of child replacement element.
Cool.
Are there any other questions?
So in the patterns, that's any XSL selector, or is it just constrained to these? Any XPath or XSL or?
I don't know. Not sure. Be good other
Probably
training.
XPath, right?
Yeah. Maybe we'll cover that next week. So. Okay. We'll stop the